crown a champion, a champion. This is me, I still on it, 'cause you all wanna be loved. Yeah, you all wanna be loved.
Hey, we're live. Happy hump day. It's Wednesday. We're going to have a show today. I think we have a lot to talk about. But before we get started, I do want to welcome everyone who's new to the Crimson Dynasty and welcome back to those who have watched before. This is our third episode, and we are a sister channel of the Bama Standard, which I know a lot of you are familiar with. So we do appreciate your support. I definitely appreciate, those who engage and, leave comments in the live chat and even go back to replay the video. So definitely feel free to do that, whatever you feel comfortable with. And before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to Workspace Solution, who's our sponsor. And so we really appreciate the partnership with Workspace Solutions. If by chance your business is in need of a digital presence or even a full-fledged marketing team at an affordable price, be sure to contact them. You can look them up online and reach out to them directly. So I did want to just mention that. I think it's always good to have those solid partnerships, and we kind of feed off of each other. So feel free to reach out to them. But for those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Sishi. I graduated from Alabama. I studied mechanical engineering, and I have family who played at Bama football. And so it's always been a tradition, even when I was young, to just kind of sit around and watch the games. But honestly, I have a love for the game of football. So, of course, I'm a huge Bama fan, always will be. But when it comes to just the sport in general, both on a collegiate and a professional level, I've always been a fan of the sport. I think to me, it's the best sport. I know some people may not agree, but I do love football, and I like to watch just, really any team. I like to see greatness. I like to see people who, they put time and effort and energy in their craft, and I think that that's important. So in Roll Tide, everyone, I see the comments at the bottom. Thanks for engaging and, leaving feedback. But I know that some of you saw the title for this video, and what I wanted to discuss, we have a lot to talk about, honestly. So our game against Middle Tennessee State, of course, I know some of you were probably there. We saw some of the highlights. I think that it wasn't, I don't think it necessarily took us by surprise per se. I think that we expected it to go a certain way. I think that there's been a lot of chatter during the off season. I mean, even when we were, in the playoffs, the chatter had started well before the season ended, to be quite honest. But I do kind of want to touch on quite a few things when it comes to the game recap. So from my perspective, I think we did really well, both on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. I think the main thing that stood out to me is that the guys are having fun again. And I think that, it became obvious. Thank you, Tristan. Thanks, Greg. It's good to see all of you. Continue to leave comments in the chat. Everyone, just feel comfortable. Like I said in the very first episode, I want everyone that tune in to kind of feel like a family in a sense. I think that sometimes there's so many rivalries, so many schools that everyone is kind of separated. So I want this to kind of feel like more of a family vibe. Us just we're sitting around having dinner and like talking about Bama football. So just, enjoy the show. But I did want to just kind of highlight certain things that I noticed in the game. I guess starting out with the offense. So maybe, I guess from a quarterback perspective, I really like what I saw with Jalen Milroe. Now, I think last season we got to see how physical he can be. Of course, he's hard to bring down. He's a good runner, a very solid guy. But I think last year we didn't get to see him in his true form. And I think a lot of that had to do with the play calling. I think that our offensive play calling last year, our schemes that we had last year, they were more tailored to Bryce and Bryce's skill set and his style of play. And while that worked for Bryce, it didn't necessarily work for Jalen. And I think because of that, we weren't really able to see him in his true form. And I think, one thing to me that stands out in terms of coaching and good coordinators is being able to identify the strengths of each player and being able to leverage that. I mean, what works for one player? You have Bryce, who came out of Mater Dei, very good passer. So it's different skill sets that you see with the different QBs. And so I think in that regard, it's kind of hard to line them up, in a parallel line and say, okay, well, this one should be as good as this one. This one should play like this one. No, they all have different skill sets. And I think with Jalen Milroe, he's one of those dual threat quarterbacks, similar to Jalen Hurts, actually, where, they're good in the passing realm of things, but they're also good with their legs. And I think that does tend to help us out. You look at like the Johnny Manziels, for example, I think that can work to our advantage. I think the tricky part there is, we recruit running backs and we recruit the best of the best. And so, in my opinion, as far as an offensive coordinator, you don't necessarily want to have to rely on your QB having to use their legs a lot. I mean, that's why you go out and you get the 5-star, running backs. But I do think that in certain games, that does help us out. And so I just want to keep that, in the back of our minds so that we have perspective. I do think that as far as Milroe, I think he was really good in terms of his timing and just knowing when to get out of the pocket. I think that I saw some confidence there. His accuracy was pretty good in terms of passing. So I did see some more confidence there as well. We do have to remember that last year when Milroe played, I mean, he came in, when Bryce went out. And I think that, that could have been, he didn't have a lot of experience at that time. And so when he played in the Arkansas game and a couple others, I could see that, kind of maybe making him feel a little uncomfortable and just, trying to adapt to the style of play calling that we had at that time. And so I don't think it's fair to kind of judge Milroe based off of what we saw last year. I think this is kind of, this is his first year starting. So we have to kind of start at that starting point. And so in regards to that, I think when players play with a certain level of confidence, not arrogance, but confidence, I think that the other players on the team, they feed off of that. And I think that we saw that. So as I mentioned, I do think that Jalen Milroe, he's a lot like Jalen Hurts in regards to being a dual threat quarterback. I think that they can get the job done, on the passing side of things, but also with their legs. Milroe, he was really throwing dimes. I mean, we saw that like all over the field. He took ownership of that field. Now, some people could say, well, you were playing Middle Tennessee State, or some may say, well, it was a home game. But to me, it's his first actual start as an actual player where play calls are actually designed somewhat around him. And so I think that with everything in perspective, I would grade him an A. To be honest. So I think that, we should be satisfied with what we saw there. I also think that Tyler Buckner, I think he looked good out there too. I think he did well. I would like to see more of Ty Simpson. I think that it would benefit us for our other quarterbacks to have more experience out there on the field. And just so that if something were to happen, similar to, when Bryce had to sit out a game or two last year and Milroe, his number was called, you want the guys to feel comfortable because it could just so happen to be one of those big games, a big rivalry game where you need to be able to step up. And it's not even just the quarterbacks. To me, it's every position on that field. You need to be ready when your name is called. It's not enough to show up and show out in the A-Day game or to show up during fall camp. No, when the lights come on, you need to be able to go out there and you're ready to go. And so that's what I expect to see. So I do think that we're going to see more of Buckner. I think we're going to see more of Ty Simpson, and I think we're going to like what we see and the different, schemes that they come up with. So one thing that I do want to mention is that also with Milroe, one thing that I mentioned last week in our episode is that MTSU, they had a really good secondary. We have to remember, I think safety and cornerback, Trey Fluellen, and then Teldrick Ross. So it's not like we were playing a weak defense. I mean, even their defensive line was pretty good. And so I think that was a really good segue into our game this weekend. I mean, it was a home game. It was a night game. We went up against a team that played a bowl game last year and won their bowl game. I think they played against San Diego State. And so we have to keep all of that in mind when we're looking at everything, holistically. So I guess moving on to, I kind of want to stay on the offense. So when I think about like our O-line, I know that we've been hearing a lot from like JC Latham and some of the other guys. I like what I saw. I think I think we expected to see the true freshman Caden Proctor out there. He looked good. Tyler Booker, JC Latham, Olas Eleni, a lot of the guys that we expected to see out there, they showed up. Now, I know that Milroe was sacked a couple of times, but if you all had actually, if you heard Coach Saban in the press conference after the game, he did mention that when Milroe was sacked, it wasn't necessarily because of a lineman who didn't block their guy. It was more so a different position, maybe a running back or a different position where they missed their guys. So I don't want the lineman to kind of take the heat on that, because I know that kind of had a couple people, rattled a little bit, but I do want to make sure that that's pointed out. I also think that our O-line will get better more and more as the season progresses. I think that plus our quarterbacks having good pocket awareness and timing, I think that that's going to allow us to make those big offensive plays that we haven't seen in a while. And so I think we do have a lot to look forward to in terms of our O-line. I was impressed there. I think that we have good depth. I think from a coaching perspective, the linemen are looking good. And I think just staying on the offensive side of the ball in terms of receivers. Now, I think if I had to pick two groups that I, tend to kind of get more excited about on the offensive side, it would be the wide receivers. And on the defensive side, it would be the secondary. So if we look at our wide receivers, not just wide receivers, but tight ends as well. The wide receivers, I was not surprised at all. Like with Isaiah Bond, for example, we saw him a little bit last year. Honestly, I think that we could have used him more last year. And I think that it goes without saying that what we saw from him during the MTSU game, to me, is just scratching the surface. Like, I get excited when I see him out there. I think that he has no ceiling. I think that, he's going to be one of those guys. It doesn't matter if it's a LSU that we're playing or Louisiana, whoever it is. I think that he's going to be that guy who's going to, he knows his assignment. He's going to get out there and he's going to get the job done. So I was very pleased with him. I also think that if someone were to ask me, out of all of our receivers, just, regardless of our depth, regardless of anything, who would be the guys, let's say two guys who would be more likely to get 1,000 yards this season, which it may not happen because I think that we can really spread it out. But if there were two guys, I would say Isaiah Bond or Malik Benson. I still think Malik Benson, we didn't see a lot of him in the game, and I think that was strategic. And we'll see why. But I think Malik Benson, he's going to be like another Jameson Williams, I believe. So I think we have a lot to look forward to from him, even though we didn't technically see it during the MTSU game. So, don't fret. I think that, he's going to be the guy that's going to really blow the top off, if you will. Now, moving on to Jermaine Burton. Now, we've talked about him. I think even when he transferred in last year from Georgia after the national championship game, some people were kind of scratching their heads last year, like, well, we didn't really see what we, thought we would see from Jermaine Burton last year. We felt like he didn't necessarily step up. We knew that he had the ability. He did get some good playing time at Georgia, but I didn't see what I would have liked to see from him last year. But in that game against MTSU, not only did he look comfortable, he looked confident. He looked like he's bought into this system that we have. You can tell that the Bama standard is back, and I feel like because that trust level is there with Tommy Rees, I think that, it's kind of like a testament to what we're seeing. And so I think Jermaine Burton, he really stepped up. I like how confident he looked. I think that, like I said, a lot of the players, they feed off of each other, and it doesn't even have to be someone who's on the same side of the ball as you. And so I remember when we had our Darius on a couple months ago, and he was basically saying, like, when he was playing, when the offense made, or when the defense made big plays, the offense, they fed into that, and they're like, okay, well, we got to go up and we got to show out and we got to compete, in a sense. And so I am kind of seeing that mentality come back, and I love it, to be honest. So I think we will see more of Burton. I think that if he remains consistent, I don't see why we wouldn't see him play in every game. And then another guy, Kobe Prentice. So I think that he did really well, and we have to remember too that he came in last year with the group that I always talk about, the Isaiah Bonds, the Chaz Prestons, Emmanuel Henderson Jr. So it's this core of wide receivers that we have that I think we should be getting excited about, and we should stay excited about. I think, and a lot of times I know I've been saying it. I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to say it until everyone like agrees with me on this. I still think that the group of receivers that came in last year, I'm almost kind of, when you think about like hindsight is 2020 in a sense, I'm almost kind of glad that we didn't utilize those guys as much as we could have last year because our opponent doesn't necessarily know what card we're going to play. When you think about like Emmanuel Henderson Jr. or Kendrick Law, who we saw out there on special teams, they really don't know what card we're going to pull. And to me, that's the best position that you want to be in. That's why I mentioned a couple weeks ago, we don't need to worry too much about the whole quarterback situation because we know what we have. We have nothing to prove to these, to the haters. I think that we know what we have. We need to be confident in that. And whichever guy steps on that field, we have to know that he's going to be prepared. So I still compare our group of receivers, and I'm going to keep doing it until I see otherwise, to our 2019 class. We had John Mechie Jr., we had Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, they couldn't do anything with us. They could not do anything with us. So to think about what we have now, and I said before that Kendrick Law, we saw him on special teams against MTSU. I said it before that he's going to be the X factor guy. He's going to be one of those young impact guys where we'll be able to put him in one of the bigger games, even like an SEC championship game, for example. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to show out, kind of like what Devontae Smith did in the national championship game when Tua threw that pass to him. So make no mistake, we have a lot to work with. I love the depth that we're seeing. The last thing that we want to do is be in a position that we were in. I want to say just a couple years ago in the national championship game against Georgia, where Mechie had already gone down in the SEC championship game, and then Jamison Williams went down in the national championship game. And we didn't really have a lot of depth there to where the other guys felt comfortable stepping in and stepping up. And so I think that we're putting ourselves in a really good position in that regard. Another guy that I want to mention is Jalen Hale. Now, if you tuned into our first episode a couple weeks ago, I mentioned that Jalen Hale, he's gonna make a statement, and we saw him in the MTSU game. Now, he came in with the 2023 class, and we also saw him at A-Day. I was impressed with him. Not a whole lot. He didn't do a whole lot there, but with what I saw, I'm like, okay, he's going to be one of those guys where we're going to hear his name more. I think he's going to be something special. He did have, I think, just one carry against MTSU, but I think if we get him out there on the field more, get him more comfortable so that he becomes more familiar with our play calling, our style of play, I mean, the sky is the limit with him as well. So I think that that's something to look forward to. I know one guy in particular that a lot of people were kind of looking for. I know I was in the first half. I'm like, well, where is Ja'Cory Brooks? Because he's still one of my favorite receivers. I think that I compare him a lot to John Mechie, not necessarily in his style of play, but the fact that he's one of those dependable guys. He's one of those guys where when it's crunch time and you're trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? It's the last minute of the Auburn game in 2021. Who can we count on? It was him. It was John Mechie and Ja'Cory Brooks. So I know that Ja'Cory only got in the second half of our game against MTSU, but I think that we're going to see him a lot more, and I think that he's gonna have some big games this year. So we have a lot to look forward to there. I think, just in terms of the tight ends, I mentioned in our episode last week that I am very impressed with what we've done so far in terms of recruiting for the tight end position. I think that that's an area that we struggled in the last couple of years, but that's one of those positions where they may not be talked about as much. I think in terms of receiving, we focus a lot on wide receivers, but I think that tight end position is so special. I think that because we know that, when you go up against certain secondaries across the SEC in particular, there are certain plays that you can't make. It's certain passes that you might not be able to, make against like a Georgia versus another team. So because of that, you don't want to just rely on wide receivers. You want to have the tight ends. So speaking of tight ends, I was very impressed with what I saw with Amari Niblack. To be honest, I wasn't surprised. I think that we kind of had an idea of what to expect with him. We have to remember with Amari, he likes to block. He lines up as a receiver. He's a good route runner. He does great in the zone. I think because of his size, I think he's a little over 6'3". Similar to CJ Dupree, where they're really good at blocking. I think CJ Dupree, he had a carry as well, and I think because of his experience at Maryland in the Big Ten, that's helped CJ, come right into the system, get out there on the field and make some good plays. So I think both of those guys, we're going to see them out there a lot more. I was happy to see Robbie Oots and Miles Kinselman out there as well, but I think the key thing that stood out to me, because a lot of times when I'm watching games, not just Bama game, but I'm looking at the way the teams line up on both sides of the ball, and I try to think about. I look at everything as like strategy, and I try to figure out, okay, why did the coach make that call? What did that coach see that made him want to make that particular call? When I noticed that we were lining up, I think 2 tight ends on multiple plays, I thought that was very good strategically. I think in terms of blocking, because of the size of our guys, that's what you want to see. And so I was very impressed with that. I think that Danny Lewis Jr., we're going to see him a lot out there too. Now, he's a true freshman. This guy is solid. This guy is ready to play. I think we're going to be seeing him soon. I think that he's going to make a name for himself this year. And I think the sky is the limit. Like I mentioned last week, we just, recruited 2 additional tight ends for the 2024 class, Jay Lindsey and I think Caleb Odom. So we're going to be stacked, and I think that that's a testament to our recruiting. I believe Joe Cox just doing awesome there. So we have a lot to look forward there. I also wanted to call out and highlight our running backs. Now, the running backs is something special. When we talk about depth, I'm seeing it there in that position group as well. If I remember correctly, we had at least 5 different running backs on that field. Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, both of them looked really good. I mean, to me, every time they touch the field, they always look solid. They always look calm, like they know their assignment, they know what to do, and they're comfortable, they're experienced. And so I think that those are 2 guys, they're going to be big playmakers throughout this season. And so I'm looking forward to that. I think Jace had a carry during the MTSU game. I think he got like almost 20 yards in 1 carry, and so I just think that we need to be expectant of seeing more of that. I think when I think of Roydell Williams, and I don't know if y'all are going to agree with me on this, but when I think of Roydell Williams, he really reminds me of a Boston Scott from the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I know that could be a stretch from some people, but I think that, both of them, they have really good vision. They're quick off the ball. They're explosive. I think Roydell averaged about 5 yards per carry in our game against MTSU. And so I just see, and I like to do some comparisons sometimes. I just see Roydell and I think about Boston Scott and just how fast, how explosive they are off the ball. So I think that that's something worth mentioning. True freshman, Justice Haynes, he did great out there as well. I like to see how he plays with this level of confidence, even in high school, where he seems settled in. And I think that he's one of those guys where you wouldn't necessarily think that he's a freshman unless someone told you that. And I think it's just in the way that he carries himself. He's really poised, kind of like Caleb Downs on the defensive side of the ball. And so I think that we have a lot to be excited about in terms of our running game, particularly with Justice Haynes. I think he was gaining about 8 yards per carry. And so he did really well. He's a powerhouse. And just like Jamarian Miller, now, I know that those of you who have heard me talk before about Bama, particularly the running backs, I talk a lot about J.M. Miller. Now, this guy, I said it before, we should have played him more last year. I think we're going to play him a lot this year. This guy, he's elite. He's explosive. He has good size. I think he's going to be one of those running backs that we talk about for the years to come, kind of like the Mark Ingrams, the Trent Richardsons, Eddie Lacy's, Josh Jacobs. He's going to be one of those guys. And so I think that we just need to keep that in mind. We're going to kind of see different guys. I think that our coaches are still kind of playing with the different schemes and, just trying to see what works and making sure that all the guys are prepared when their numbers are called. Now, another guy, another running back that we saw, He is actually a part of the 2023 class, but we didn't get to see him in the 8A game. I don't think he got to campus until the summer. Was Richard Young. Now, when he got into the game against MTSU, not only did he understand his assignment, he completed that assignment. Like, so he's a true freshman, and I think that what we're seeing from him is just the beginning. I think that he's one of those guys where it's when he really gets comfortable, he's gonna let loose, and we're gonna be impressed. I think it's gonna be. To me, I think this is going to be a season where we haven't something that we haven't seen in a very long time. I know I keep saying that. It probably sounds like a broken record, but I don't care because I'm going to keep saying it. I'm really impressed with what we're doing. I'm really impressed with the coaching and the decisions that are being made because, I think a testament to how well our play calling is and the coaching is being able to make the right decisions at the right time. And so that's what I'm seeing. I know that we weren't necessarily happy to see Tommy Rees and Kevin Steele in that box. I think that I might have some PTSD from last year from seeing Bill O'Brien in that box all the time. But I think that it worked to our advantage. I think them having kind of like that bird's eye view of the players and kind of like, different shifts that we needed to make on the field, I think that may have worked to our advantage. So overall, I would say from an offensive perspective, I think Tommy Rees is doing a great job. I think that he not only is taking his job seriously, but it seems to me like he cares about the experience that the players are having, not just on the field, but them as a person, even in their development. So just making sure that they develop those leadership skills, making sure that they hold each other accountable. And I like to see that. So I think that Tommy Rees, I would give him an A so far. I don't know if you all agree. Leave it in the chat if you agree with me. If not, tell me why. I would really love to hear that from you all. I see Squidward's World. Tommy can stay in the box, but I think Steele should be. You know what? I think you're right. If I remember correctly, during a couple of the Notre Dame games last year, I think Tommy Rees was mostly in the box. I think we remember the game where he called down to the quarterback and basically went completely off on the quarterback. My thing is for Tommy Rees, I don't necessarily mind him being in the box if he gets the job done. To me, everyone has to hold each other accountable. The coordinators need to hold the players accountable, and Saban needs to hold the coordinators accountable. If he can get his job done while in the box, I'm cool with that. If not, the moment that we see some hiccups, he needs to come on back down. But I do agree with you that we should have Kevin Steele down there on that field. Hey, if we need to get him a chair, if we need to get him one of those fans with the little neck things with the fan, whatever it takes, he needs to be on that field because we all got to eat. And we need to make sure the defense is out there eating because we starving out there. But so that's kind of my assessment of the offense. I know I said a lot, but I definitely wanted to kind of put the spotlight on certain guys. I mean, they've been working hard, working it's been so hot this summer, particularly in Alabama. And so for the guys to show up every single day, play at 100, really at 110, I think we need to highlight those guys and give them their kudos. And so if I move over to the defense, I saw a lot that I liked. I was really impressed with our linemen. I think that we were physical all 4 quarters, and that's what we want to see. I don't care about having a big lead at halftime. I don't care about having a big lead, at the start of the 3rd quarter. We need to play physical each quarter until that clock stops, and that's what the mentality should be. And that's what I saw. And so when we look at the defensive side, so like Jaheim Otis, Justin Boydby, and even true freshman James Smith. Now, I think all of them did a great job. Now, James Smith, I know that he came out of Montgomery, went to Carver, 5-star out of Montgomery, Alabama. And I know that he was heavily recruited, not just in Alabama, but across the nation. I think he signed alongside of Quay Russaw. Now, Quay Russaw, I think we're going to be seeing him very soon. But I think James played with a level of confidence that seems like he's caught on to the Bama system pretty quickly. I know that it kind of, the new system that we have, I think it's really complex because we're going beyond just having new coordinators. We're having to kind of go backwards and kind of, figure out this Bama standard and kind of, reignite that fire. And so there's a lot to be done, not even just for the new guys to adapt to, but for the current guys, the ones who, have been here a couple of years. We're having to relearn the standard in a sense, but I'm fine with that. I see Lucien. He says, as far as the defensive line goes, they need to be tougher. And I think that we will see that. I think that we will see that. I think that as far as the schemes, we said in our episode a couple weeks ago that we're gonna see some movement. We're gonna see different guys playing at different times. But I think that once we solidify who those starters are gonna be, the guys who are really gonna step up to the plate, I think we're gonna see them play stronger and play tougher. But I do appreciate your comment. I think that we also have to keep in mind, especially about, these freshmen and even, the sophomores that, transitioning out of high school and playing that collegiate ball, it's a different level. It's just, and that's just what it is. And so we have to kind of have some grace there for the guys and just remember that and keep that in perspective. Because I know that, when we watch Bama football, we know our past games, what we've been able to do, all the championships and all of that. So there is a standard. I think even subconsciously, there's a standard that there's an expectation that we have, but we just have to remember that making that adjustment from high school to college, sometimes it's not the easiest. And so I think we just have to keep that into perspective. I will say though, I didn't necessarily like that MTSU was able to run the ball against us. I mentioned last week their running back, I think Frank Peasant, he was able to run against us a little more than he should have been able to do. And so I do think that that's something that we need to work on. And I don't want to see that again because, and I'm going to get into this later, Texas, they have some really good running backs. And so I want to make sure that we get solid up there up front because they're not going to be running around on us like that. Like we're not going to be having that. So we need to go ahead and get that in line, as soon as possible. I think in terms of our linebackers, we look really, really good. I mean, I could literally go through a list. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to do that as far as who I think showed up, showed out. Deontae Lawson did excellent. Kendrick Blackshire, I was really happy to see him step up. I think last year we wanted to see him, do a little more, but I was happy to see him step up in our game against MTSU. And I think he recovered a fumble, if I remember correctly. So I was really pleased with him. Dallas Turner, of course, Chris Braswell, and also Trez Marshall. Trez is a guy who transferred to Bama earlier this year after Georgia beat TCU in the national championship game. He transferred from UGA, and so he showed out in the fall camp. He showed up in the MTSU game, and so I was pleased with him as well. Quandarius Robinson, he did really well. Had some big plays, and I think we even got to see Keanu Coat, Sean Murphy, Jeremiah Alexander. So I like the fact that we were able to get different guys on the field, get them comfortable, regardless of their seniority or their experience, get them out there, get them comfortable, get them adjusted to, because it's one thing to have fall camp. It is what it is with fall camp, but it's another thing when the lights are on and you got 100,000 people in there screaming, some of them screaming against you, it's a whole nother ball game. And so I think that it's good that we've been able to see the different guys kind of rotate in and out. I think as fans, we should be excited with what we're seeing. I think the coaching it has been really good. And I think from a coaching perspective, we're still creating those different schemes on both sides of the ball to see what's working and what's not, where are those weak points per se. And so, and I think I also heard today that we'll have Jihad Campbell back. And so that's good as well. I think that's going to really help us in terms of our game against Texas this weekend. So, we have a lot to look forward to. Of course, we can always find, room for improvement. Because there's never going to be perfection, but you should strive for perfection. I think, you line up every team, the Georgia's, every team. No one is going to have a 100% perfect game, but I think if everyone shows up with perfection as a goal, as a target, then you'll see a difference in how they play versus a team that, where you have players show up at 75%. So I do think that we still need to aim for perfection. That needs to be our goal, and we need to hold each other accountable all 4 quarters. So that's just my take in terms of our linemen, our linebackers. But as far as the secondary, which is, another one of my favorite positions aside from wide receiver. So I'm excited. Look, I've been talking about our secondary. I'm going to keep talking about our secondary. I think that, at least the last couple of episodes on the Crimson Dynasty, when I've mentioned our secondary, I've talked a lot about or compared our secondary to our 2015 class. And for those who have missed those episodes, what I'm seeing with what we have in terms of our safeties and our cornerbacks, it reminds me a lot of our 2015 class. Like, I'm gonna keep saying it: the Minka Fitzpatricks, the Tony Browns, Eddie Jackson, Marlon Humphrey, Ronnie Harrison. Like, we were shutting stuff down. People were scared to play us, and that's how it needs to be. We need to be loaded, but we need to put that fear. We need to put that fear in them, man. We need to have the opposing teams mentally check out before the game even starts. That's what we need to do. So just to highlight a few guys, I think Caleb Downs, of course, that goes without saying. He showed up, showed out. He's another one of those guys who, if you didn't know that he was a freshman, you wouldn't be able to tell by the way that he plays. He looks very comfortable. I think that he's adjusted very quickly to our way of playing, our system, just the Bama system in general. I think that he has really good football IQ, and I'm really happy with what he's doing. I was really impressed with him, and I think we're going to continue to see him. I think he's going to be our one of our starters every game. I think consistently. I hear that he's a hard worker. He just wants to win, and I think that winner's mentality is what we need to see. I also like what I saw from Malachi Moore and Jalen Key. Now, Jalen Key is the transfer from, I think, UAB, and I remember he had a nice interception during the game as well. And so I was really glad to see both of them step up. I know that they had both sustained some injuries, small injuries, so we still don't know if they're going to play this weekend. I really hope they do. If by chance they can't, I do believe that we still have weapons there that we could utilize. And so, I'm sure we'll find out pretty soon whether they'll be playing or not. I think Terrion Arnold. So in terms of like the cornerbacks, Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid, Trey Amos, who transferred in from Louisiana, they all look good out there as well. I think that they played with a certain level of physicality to where, we owned the field. I know we were playing at home, but it was one of those games where even if we played away, we would have owned their field too. And so I was happy with what I saw in terms of the physical aspect. I think Kool-Aid, I think he's going to get his punt return sooner than he thinks. He's been itching for it. I think he's going to get it. I think hopefully it's in one of our bigger games. I would love to see him get that, and not even just one. I want to see him get more than one. And hold on, and wait a minute. Speaking about Kool-Aid, that guy, I think number 12 with MTSU, that guy that hit Kool-Aid, we need to do something about that. I ain't like that. I took that personally. I think I actually stood up when I saw that. I ain't like that. That was yeah. I didn't too much like that. So I know y'all probably feel the same way. I'm glad that Kool-Aid didn't react the way I would have if I would have got hit like that. But, it is what it is. But I'm glad that he's okay. I think that was targeting, and I'm going to continue thinking that was targeting. I am hearing that Jalen Key and Malachi Moore are back this week. So, we about to turn up. Look, I told y'all I try to act civilized on here. I'm going to continue to try to act civilized. I told my mom I'm not gonna act, too wild on here. But look, I get excited. I get really excited to see our guys. I get excited because like I said, the last couple of years, it's been a lot of disrespect. It's been a lot of, all this chatter. And you do need to let that fuel you. I know that Coach Saban calls that rat poison, which that's exactly what that is. But I think that now we need to have that chip on our shoulder, even for the playoff committee. That wasn't no playoff committee. Like, that was a nonprofit organization, in my opinion, because they shouldn't have been paid a dime for that stuff that they tried to pull when they left Bama out and they put TCU in. But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. That's just my opinion, and I'm going to leave it there. Another guy, Earl Little Jr., I was really happy to see him. I want to see him, that one hand interception he got during A-Day. I want to see that. I want to see that live in action. So I was happy to see him. True freshman Tony Mitchell, I was very pleased with him as well. Eric D, shout out to you. Sishi Roll Tide. We're about to give Texas, but look, we about to get him the business. We about to get him an LLC. We about to get, I don't know what they thought, but they about to, they about to find out real quick. Like we about to do this. But yeah, so on the defensive side, I'm really pleased with what I saw. Tony Mitchell, and I said last week we're going to see him out there. I think we're going to see Tony Mitchell out there a little more. I mean, this guy, 5-star coming out of high school, elite player. So just get used to his name. I think overall, I can kind of reiterate the sentiment that Jaheim Otis said this week about Texas. He said 2 words: "We coming." We coming. I mean, like that's it. We coming, and we coming in full force. We're not here to play. This ain't no merry-go-round. This ain't no patty cake. We're not here to play games. We're here to play all 4 quarters. And I'm excited to see our guys show up. I think at this point it's beyond being hungry. I think this is like a level of starvation. And you know, I asked Stephen M. Smith when he joined last week. I said, you know, Stephen, what happens when you have dogs that's been, you know, essentially locked up, caged up, and they haven't been let out? When you finally let them out, what's going to happen? He said, "We're gonna kill you, period." That's it. That's all that needs to be said. But that's essentially my recap for our game against MTSU. Overall, I'm pleased with what we saw. I think that Coach Saban's press conference after the game, he touched on a few things, but it was a few things that stood out to me that I haven't heard from him in quite some time, and I think that that speaks volumes. He mentioned that he's happy with what he saw. He mentioned that the players had good energy and enthusiasm even at the start of the game, and that was something that I noticed even when we played Tennessee last year or LSU, for example. We literally creeping out of the tunnel like mice. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, this ain't Alabama. Like, let me go put some food on the stove because I don't know what we think we're doing today. Like, we were literally creeping out of that tunnel like we were scared. So for Coach Saban to mention that he liked the enthusiasm that he saw, I think that he that spoke volumes. And so I'm really happy with that. I think that you know, and of course he acknowledged that there were some things that we needed to clean up, and I think we all saw that. We don't need to be allowing, you know, teams to run against us. We need to be able to stop the run. I'm going to hit on that when it comes to Texas. But overall, I like what Saban said. He mentioned that the atmosphere was great, and I think that that's a testament to the fans, that even looking at the past, I would say the past 2 seasons, you know, the fans, I mean, it's easy to get discouraged and, you know, kind of feel some type of way, but the fact that we still, you know, we still show up, we still show, you know, what we think, you know, is the Bama standard that's still in place, that we haven't lost. And so I'm excited about that. I think overall, Coach Saban, his feedback to me was a testament of him being proud of what he's seeing. And it's, to me, a complete turnaround from what we saw last season. He also mentioned that we did really well on 3rd down. And so I think that that's really good because I know that that was an area that we kind of, you know, didn't do so well in last year. And also penalties. I noticed that we didn't hardly get many penalties at all. I don't even know in the first quarter if we had any penalties in the MTSU game. So I think that that's awesome. I just think that, you know, with some of Saban's feedback, so he mentioned like explosive plays, you know, I think that we're seeing more creativity in terms of the plays as well. And so overall, I think that our coaching is good. It's a lot better than what, you know, we had seen the past couple of years. We have to give kudos to Holman Wiggins because I know Saban also mentioned how impressed and how pleased he is to see how the wide receiver group is developing. And so I think that's you know, kudos to Holman Wiggins. I think, yeah, we only had 2 penalties total and 0 on the offensive. I mean, that, come on, like look at, how many games last year did we have over 5 penalties? So that means that the team is more disciplined. I think the team feels more settled, and I also think that they trust the system that they're in now from the coordinator level, especially. So I think that this is a really good sign. Now, what I know that a lot of you wanted to, you know, hear more than anything is what I think is going to happen with our game against Texas this weekend. I think coming off of our win against MTSU, the way that we won, the energy that we saw, the guys literally having fun. That's what you really want to see. If anything, you want to see the guys have fun. You want to see like how Milroe was kind of standing at the tunnel during halftime as the guys were walking to the locker room, and he's, you know, shaking their hand, similar to what Bryce was doing last year. You know, just showing his leadership. And I think it's natural for him. Now, I will say, in terms of our game against Texas, of course I believe we're going to win. I think honestly, that point spread is going to be much larger than we think. I think that we still have. Let's see, Coach Steele about that. Yeah, It's this IT. Yeah, that's what I've been saying. It's something about Kevin Steele. Even when you listen to him talk, that dog mentality, that winner's mentality. He's the type of guy. He's the type of coach where he doesn't even have to say much. Like, you know what the assignment is, and it's just that respect that's there. Like, it's a whole different level, and I'm happy. I'm pleased with Kevin Steele. I'm pleased with Tommy Rees as well. Squidward's World, I see, still has this defense actually understanding their assignment on who to cover and how to read the play. Whereas Golden, it was like our players were confused every play. Exactly. And on top of that, that's a really good point. On top of that, it seemed like on the defensive side, we had so many different options where different plays were being called, and it seemed like it was confusing the guys. So by the time the opposing team is lining up, we're not even ready. And we looked confused. I think we looked confused most of last year, and that's just not the Bama way. But thanks for pointing that out. I think that was a really good point. I think going into our game against Texas, of course, they'll have Quinn Ewers back. I know that, we had kind of hit him pretty hard last year, and he couldn't play, all 4 quarters last year. But they'll have him back. I'm sure he kind of has a chip on his shoulder, a little attitude, but we can fix that. I know that he also likes to use his legs, so I think that we're going to have to put a lot of pressure on him early on in the game. We're going to have to put a lot of pressure all 4 quarters. This is going to be one of the keys to beating Texas. A lot of pressure up front on Quinn. We need to be blitzing them. We need to sack Quinn. I'm going to say we need to sack Quinn at least 3 times, and we can do that. We need to send them home. We need to send them home early because, to be honest, I don't even like their colors. So I think that we need to send them home. I don't want to be looking at them for too long. I think that we need to tire out their defense. We need to be running the ball down their throats. We need to run that ball down their throats. How do you think Florida State was able to beat up on LSU the way that they did this weekend? I mean, what I noticed after halftime, they just kept running the ball. They were passing the ball, but they kept running the ball, and they were tiring out their defense, LSU's defense. I think we need to take that same approach. Now, I will say, don't be surprised if we see their backup quarterback, Malik Murphy, in. I think he played a little bit this past weekend against Rice, and he did pretty well. He's not much of a running quarterback, so I think if we do see him, he'll be doing more passing. He'll probably be targeting a receiver, but I don't think he's going to attempt those longer passes in comparison to Quinn. Now, I do think that with Quinn, see, Texas is aware of our secondary. I think that they understand that our secondary is a lot better than Rice, the team they played this past weekend. So I think because of that, now Quinn, he's thrown balls almost like, I think, 50, maybe 45, 49 yards, long or deep. And so he likes to pass the ball. We need to take that away from him. I don't think he's going to throw as many long passes during the game against Bama, more so because of our secondary. I think if anything, he's going to target more of those the tight ends, or even some of the wide receivers, but it's going to be shorter passes. I think the guys that we need to watch out for in particular are like the Xavier Worthies. I mean, this guy, I think their game against Rice, he got almost 100 yards. He's a junior, so he has a good amount of experience on the field. So I think we need to definitely keep our eyes on Xavier Worthy. We need to cover him. Do not let that guy get open. We need to cover him, and I'm going to keep saying it all 4 quarters. Anytime he's on that field, we need to be covering him. I think they have a tight end, Jatavion Sanders. He got some carries against Rice. I think that because our secondary is so good, I do think that Quinn is going to target him a little more. I don't think he's going to attempt as many long passes when they play us. And so I think that Jatavion Sanders guy, we need to keep our eyes on him. I think there's another wide receiver, Jordan Whittington, or I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He's a wide receiver. I think he's a senior possibly. I think that they're going to target him maybe for shorter passes. There's another guy, Adonai Mitchell. I know he had some carries in their game against Rice. And so these are the guys that, they were getting at least 5, 8, maybe 10 averaging, yards per carry. So the Xavier Worthies, Adonai Mitchell, Jatavion Sanders, Jordan Whittington, these are the guys that I think we need to watch in terms of the passing game. Now, one thing, like I mentioned, Quinn likes to run the ball as well. And so I think that's why a lot of pressure is needed up front. We need to lock him down. We don't need to let him run. I think what they are going to try to do, they're going to try to run the ball a lot, because I think that they saw that MTSU was able to run against us a little bit. So I think they do have a few running backs who are able to get quite a few yards in their game against Rice. I think they were getting averaging about 5 yards per carry. One guy in particular, Jaden Blue, I think. So he's a sophomore, still pretty young, but not only y'all need to go and look at his stats. Not only did he play last year, he's a lot better than he was last year. When you look at his numbers, he's definitely drastically improved. I think that we need to lock him down like we did Leonard Fournette a few years ago. We can't let him, he ain't gonna be running all over us like he's crazy. We're not doing none of that. So we need to lock him down. I think CJ Baxter is another guy that we need to watch now. He's a freshman, and I think he had a play where against Rice, I think he got almost 30 yards against them. So we need to be shutting them down all night. Jaden Blue, CJ Baxter. There's another guy, Jonathan Brooks. He's a sophomore. He did really well against Rice as well. But I think one thing that we need to watch with the Jonathan Brooks guy is that he can also catch pretty well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Quinn making those shorter passes to Jonathan Brooks. So I think we need to keep our eyes on him as well. I think another guy, if y'all remember, we had a guy on our team, Keelan Robinson. He actually transferred from Bama and went to Texas. Well, he actually played in the game last week against Rice. And so don't be surprised if we see him. I think he may, kind of have a chip on his shoulder, and we can knock that off too if we need to. We can do what we need to do. But I think in terms of the offense, I think they're going to kind of focus a little bit more on the running game and those shorter passes. I think the names that I named out, so the Jaden Blues, Jonathan Brooks, CJ Baxter, Xavier Worthy in terms of passing, Jordan Whittington, all these guys, Adonai Mitchell, these are guys that we need to keep our eyes on. They need to be covered the whole night, all 4 quarters. Anytime they step the field, we need to be covering them. I think in terms of their defense is pretty good now. Their secondary is pretty good. I would say in terms of their linebackers, they have a few guys, David Benda, I think like a Jalen Ford. A lot of these guys, they have experience, and we need to be mindful of that. I think those are a couple guys that we need to watch in terms of the linebackers. But in terms of their secondary, I do think that there are a few guys, the cornerbacks and the safeties. I think Malik Muhammad, Derek Williams. I think there's a guy, Barron, Jade Barron or Jade Barron. These are guys that we need to watch out for. Kitten Crawford, Jaden Gilbo, all these guys, they're secondary. We need to, I think, and this is going to answer some questions too in terms of our quarterback who's going to start going forward. I still think it's going to be Milroe, but their secondary is pretty darn good. So we need to be able to create that separation if we're going to be, attempting those longer passes. So I do think that I think we're going to win. I think that if we can come out strong and if we can, we need to own that field all 4 quarters, but come out strong. We need to be applying pressure all night against Quinn. And I don't even care if I think Malik, the backup quarterback, if he gets out there, we're going to send him right back off the field. We need to be applying pressure the entire night. I think that our linemen, we need to hold those guys. We're not going to be letting them run the ball all over us. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. Their secondary, like I said, they're good. Some of them have some pretty good experience. They do have a couple freshmen who I think are going to try to stake their claim because, some of them are still trying to work for their position and they want to start as well. So a lot for them, they're still competing as well. So we need to keep that in mind. But I think overall, our game against Texas, I think that's going to be, they've already hyped it up, all year. And speaking of which, I remember earlier this year, I think it was back in March, there was something that the governor of Texas, something that he said that I think we need to keep in mind. And I think we need to have a little chip on our shoulder when we go into that game this weekend. Someone had asked him about Milroe and what he thought about, being that Jalen Milroe is from Texas and, just kind of what Governor Abbott thought was going to happen when they played us, this upcoming weekend. And I remember Governor Abbott basically saying, well, he's not a Bryce. So I just want to, make sure that we keep that in the back of our minds, that we keep that chip on our shoulder so that when Jalen goes out there and ball out, he'll show, not just Governor Abbott, but everyone else who's been hating that, well, I don't have to be a Bryce. I'm Jalen Milroe, and you're going to remember my name. So I do want to point that out, and I think that we need to keep that type of attitude because it's been a lot of talking, but I think we're going to shut them up. I see this game, if we get an early lead, if we can kind of, put a lot of pressure on Quinn, stop their running game, I see us, winning at least by 20-ish points, 27 points. I could see us maybe hitting like that 42, maybe up to 49 to maybe at most 17. Keep in mind this past weekend when Texas played Rice, a lot of the points, because it was a very slow start, we need to capitalize off of that. A lot of their points that they scored were, it was just, field goals. I think they didn't really start scoring touchdowns until later in the second half. So I think that we need to capitalize up front, apply a lot of pressure, shut them down, shut that defense down. We need to run circles around them. But I do think that it's going to be a larger point spread than what people think. I'm thinking like a 42-49 to like a max of 21. But yeah, that's my prediction. This is going to be a game that's going to solidify certain things as far as who's going to start going forward. But we have a lot to look forward to. So we are coming up on an hour, y'all. Look, I talked for literally almost an hour straight with no guests on. I think that's pretty cool. Like I said, I'm passionate about the game of football. I think it's the best sport, American football. I love to watch the other guys, the other teams. Florida State against LSU. I mean, I just love the game of football, and I think that we need to rally behind our players, our coaches, and just support them. Keep the negativity at a minimum, and just look forward to our game each weekend. We're going to get better and better. We will. I think we're going to go undefeated. I think that the players need to remain bought into the system. They bought into it, but we need to stay consistent with that. And I think we need to show up at 110 every single game. I don't care if it's an away game. We need to show up 110%. So I do want to mention that, my birthday is this Friday. So I think the fact that we are playing Texas, I think that it's a great way to celebrate my birthday. So I'm super excited. And to share it with you all. I really appreciate the support. And those of you who have, tuned in consistently, and even the new people who are here, I really appreciate, your feedback. I appreciate the engagement. I'm really hoping to, let's see, I think our crowd would be a massive. Yep, you're right about that. And I think 38-23. No, I don't know. I think it's going to be a little larger of a point spread. Tommy Tidwell, 49-14. I think that's a little bit more realistic. The fact that Rice held them to not scoring really any touchdowns until the second half. Maybe they had one in the first half. I think that we can do a little better than that, and I think we will. So yeah, I think that, I think we need to get excited. It's almost that time. I think ESPN College Game Day is going to be in Tuscaloosa. Thank you, Eric, for the early birthday wishes. I'm so excited. I think it's awesome that, we have one of our bigger games this weekend. Thanks, Philip. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the feedback. Thanks for the birthday wishes. And, thanks for your continuous support. We'll be back on next Wednesday. More than likely the same time. If that changes, we'll definitely let you all know. But yeah, roll tide, roll, stay safe out there, stay blessed, and just remember, keep the negativity at a minimum, and just have a great time this weekend celebrating the game, and I guess virtually celebrating my birthday with me. So thank you all, and have a blessed night.